All right. Again, well, for anybody who's listening to the recording, just welcome, and we'll see our speakers throughout the day. But yeah, we're going to talk today about House Bill 66, the Social Work Education Enrollment and Training Program, that will help social work students in particular to get their education, knowing the burdens that we face. Who wants to take introducing that? Sierra, do you want to?
Yeah, we can talk about how we introduce it.
Oh, Sierra, your volume did the weird volume thing.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry y'all, my sound goes in and out. For some reason my work laptop it just does not like me when it comes to technology. So every now and again my sound may go out, so just let me know. So what I was saying, yes, Katie and I can sort of talk about how we came about this bill, and then Sean, and then we can pass it to you, and you can actually talk about the bill. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, perfect. Um, so actually, Katie, I'm going to let you lead this because you did most of the work in the beginning, and then I sort of just hopped in as usual. So I'm going to hand it to you. You can sort of talk about sort of how you found the bill, how we came about. I'll interject when I can, and then we'll pass it to Sean.
All right, I was gonna say don't mute yourself because every time you come off of mute is when you're all quiet. So you got to just stay unmuted. Uh, yeah. So as President McNeil said, um, so I would say it was both of us that came across the bill. But one of the things that I do in my full-time role at my job is that I track all the legislation that's coming and going in Pennsylvania, where it's going, what it's doing. And so when I saw that Rep. Howard had introduced actually two social work bills, I was like, this is amazing. This is so exciting. People are looking at social workers and caring about us. This is great. So I'm sorry, President McNeil, I apologize. President McNeil and I work together in our professional job as well. So sometimes I slip and call her Sierra, but she is President McNeil, so I apologize. We tracked those bills. We saw, like I said, we were excited to see that Rep. Howard was excited about social workers. And we sort of went through them and looked at, what they were trying to do. Those two bills at the time were what the sweet bill is now, and then also a bill around student loan forgiveness, which may or may not come back at some point, right, Sean? I don't know.
Still up in the air at the moment.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I know the focus was shifted to the sweet bill because paying social work student interns is so important. So we looked at the bills and we were like, this is really great. However, there's some stuff in here that was about how social workers were credentialed and where how the process would look. So President McNeil and I reached out to Rep. Howard's office. We were connected with Ben and then later with Sean. And we met with them and we talked about, all the parts of being a social worker. They were eager to listen to us, hear about our experiences, both as interns and social workers. And they were wonderful and we gave them feedback and they came back to us several times. And then when they were planning to rewrite the bill, we tossed it over to NASW because President McNeil and I are not allowed to engage in lobbying in our full-time jobs because we work for a nonprofit that is attached to the city. So we tossed it over to NASW. We got NASW involved, of course. Naturally. So I am one of the chairs of the legislative committee. So we brought it to that committee. We did a brief of the bill. We got feedback from a lot of our members. We have members there who've worked in child welfare, who work in academia all over the place. Forensic social work. I'm trying to think of all the members, peer social work. So we got feedback from them. We took that back to Rep. Howard's office again. Sean and Ben were really wonderful. They met with us like a million times and were very patient, asked lots of questions, really, really were eager to learn. It was a wonderful advocacy experience. And then I was going to say that there's been a couple of iterations, but the bill was reintroduced pretty early on this session, since the bill number is 66. That's early. That's early in the session. So it was introduced as a high priority from Rep. Howard. So that's sort of where we are. I don't know, Sierra, if you want to talk a little more about it. That was the process, though.
Yeah. Did my sound okay? I feel like I have
Yes.
to
Yes.
speak up more.
Sorry, President McNeil. Sierra.
President
Sorry.
McNeil, yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, so honestly, Katie, you hit everything. And I think the reason why I like to start out with this story is because as social workers, I think sometimes we think advocacy is this very large sort of endeavor that we have to take on. And sometimes it's just making sure that we're paying attention to what's happening at the state level and then finding those elected officials who have interest in what impacts our profession and then having a conversation with them. I think from what Katie has shown you, we were able to sort of, not sorry, she was able to communicate sort of how we were able to, in our day jobs, recognize this, work to then work with Rep. Howard's office to then understand what does it mean to be a social worker? What is that process? We know that becoming a social worker is very complex. And again, we appreciate Rep. Howard's office, Sean and Ben working really hard on this, but understanding sort of the difference between licensed social worker, licensed clinical social worker, and then the LBS is a challenge. And so we really do appreciate Rep. Howard's office for taking the time and working with us. I think the other thing I would like to highlight is this is sort of what NASW is there for. We always have this conversation about what does NASW do for social workers? And again, we are the lobbying organization for you all. And so this is a amazing practical story of how we were able to bridge not only what we do as social workers in our day job, but how NASW was there to support us and back us up in moving this initiative forward. So if there's anything that you take away from today's session or all these sessions is that NASW is there to support you, and we want to know what is impacting you and how we can best support you. And so again, thank you, Katie, for that story of sort of how we got into this point. And so now, Sean, I would like to pass it to you where you can talk about the bill. Yeah, take it from here.
I think you all need to give yourself some more credit in this. Representative Howard, one of her daughters is training to be a social worker, and she heard some of the woes, and she said to Ben and to myself, "We need to do something about this. Could you guys look into that?" We said, "Of course we could look into that." And then she walked away, and we turned to each other and said, "Do you know anything about social work?" And then you guys came in and did all the work. So thank you for everything that you've done for us. So I think we have Sweet in a good place. We really nailed that down last. They are not called semesters. They are not called semesters. Session. Last session, we got that bill in a good spot. This time round, it's HB 66. And so what this bill does is provide stipends to social workers. Hold on, I think it's in the master's programs, the specifics, this one's fairly limited, provides a $5,000 a semester stipend while students are in their internships to help them get by. And we really focused on this one with the momentum last session from the student teacher bill that was introduced by Representative Otten, who's our neighbor here in Chester County. So it modeled a lot on that bill. And so we saw the momentum with that and thought it was a great opportunity to move now. So if you have questions about specifics with the bill, we can get into that. As it stands now, it was reintroduced back in January. It's currently with the House Human Services Committee. So the first step is to get a vote with that committee. There's a new chair in that committee, Representative Dan Williams, who's also close by here in Chester County. We have a good relationship with his office. He was a co-sponsor of the bill in its previous iteration. He is not a co-sponsor this time. I think that may be due to his being the chair that he didn't want to throw stuff out there. But as far as I know, he is still very supportive of the bill. So a little bit of homework for everybody. Assignment 1, reach out to your local state rep and say, support HB 66 when it comes up for a vote. Homework assignment 2, reach out to Representative Williams' office and say, Chair Williams, please bring this to a vote so we can get it forward. And then once it clears down the line, there will be a homework assignment number 3. Reach out to your state senator and say, please support this legislation, because the state senate's always the hurdle.
You know, Sean, I was going to say, if there's anything that you can communicate to this group, what would be the next steps? And so you kind of beat me to it. And so for all of you social workers, I know that right now is a time where we're getting it from everywhere. We're seeing what's happening at the federal level. We're seeing what's happening in our local communities. And right now, everything seems overwhelming. And it seems like, where do I even start? Where do I even begin? And so having some of these practical steps is going to be helpful in sort of moving forward with advocacy. Um, I know that we feel like we have to do everything right now. And this was actually going to be part of my spiel on Monday. So you'll just get a little bit of it today. But I saw something pop up on social media when I was doing my what I call doomsday scroll now. And so it was about, they said something about, oh, what was the meme exactly? But essentially was talking about a choir. And it asked the question of, do we know how a choir is able to hold notes for a long time? So is anyone here in the choir or have sung in a choir before? Okay, couple hands. Okay. So when I had asked this question, because I was not in a choir, never been in a chorus or any of that, so I really didn't understand what this meme was talking about. And so I was talking to my coworker who was in a choir, and she was saying that you take breaths, that that it's not one person or it's not the entire group that is taking this very long breath, but there is more of sort of taking turns with the breath, so then that way the note continues to go further. And I thought about this and I'm like, how do I put this into advocacy terms? And that's exactly what it is, that we all are at some point in time taking that breath to rest, but we're also making sure that we're part of the larger structure to get to that end note, right? But in this capacity, we're talking about the passing of the bill. And so part of lead is where we sort of start with that long note, right? So we have lead, we show up, we make noise. We had 450 social workers last year show up. That means something to elected officials, that social workers were able to come up. Sorry, I got distracted because I see there's stuff going off in the chat. So ADHD brain kind of got us distracted a little bit. But when you have 450 social workers show up, that means something to elected officials. That lets them know that social workers are able to organize and that we are advocating for these bills that are impacting our profession, but also this will impact the community as well. Because if we are creating a competent workforce, then that has a direct impact on the constituents that we are serving in the elected officials area. So what I would like to do is then also going with Sean's homework is for each of you to pick one of those homework assignments. So whether it's contacting your elected official to ask them to vote yes on this bill, or if it's contacting Rep Dan Williams. And I want to make sure that we're saying Dan Williams because I get him confused with another Williams. They're very close. I think their districts are very close too, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure that you're contacting State Rep Dan Williams. If anyone, Angie or Katie, can put his information in the chat, so then that way we can make sure that everyone's connecting to the right person.
Katie did already.
Oh, okay. See, that's why I had to turn the chat function off because I couldn't concentrate on what I was saying. So either contact a local elected official or contact Dan Williams to bring the bill to a vote. And so just pick one of those, right? So we have, how many people do we have on here? So we have 33 people. If 15 of you make a phone call to your elected official and then 15 of you decide to make a phone call to Dan Williams, that is advocacy. And I'm telling you right now, that will make an impact. Actually, Angie, I believe you have a story of how something was able to move with just 5 phone calls. So if you don't mind, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you don't mind sort of sharing that story.
Yeah, I've got one. I know Natalie has one that's more recent. Mine is from a few years back now, but maybe 8-10 years ago, we were working really hard on a bill to get it moving in the Senate. And the committee chair was just, politely listening, but we were not on his radar at all. 8 constituents, 8 people who lived in that Senate district who were stakeholders just like you. They were members of a profession and that were trying to move a piece of legislation. 8 people made personal phone calls to his district and Harrisburg offices, and all of a sudden, this was a top priority. It was shortly after an election that was closer than I think he thought it would have been, and he was very, very tuned in to what his constituents wanted at that time. It was a convergence of the right time and the right, interaction from an organization much like yours. And 8 phone calls made all the difference in the world, and that legislation got moving. And I know Natalie's got a even more recent story too, where it's even fewer people.
Yeah, Representative Venkat is a huge advocate, and he's a healthcare provider. He's an emergency room physician who still practices, and he's very open and willing to talk to constituents and just advocates in the Capitol. And he's talked to a couple of our other clients and reiterated that, if he gets a handful of emails, he takes notice, and that ticks his brain that this is probably something I should look at. But then if he gets 3 or 4 phone calls, and then if one person walks into his office and mentions this issue, he's had that happen where he had a handful of emails, a few phone calls, and then someone actually showed up in the office and said, hey, this really matters to me. Could you look at it? And he said immediately, I thought this really matters to people. They are taking the time to call my office and leave a message or talk to a staffer or physically walk in my office and say, hey, this is important to me. And he really took notice and he acted on that piece of legislation because he just knew that if you're taking the time to reach out a few minutes out of your day, it's really important to the constituents in his district. So it does matter, even if you think that it's the smallest movement in advocacy, all those little pieces add up to the big movement pieces.
Thank you. And I appreciate those stories because I think sometimes we feel like we have to make these very big grand gestures, but sometimes making a phone call or setting up a meeting is all that is needed. Katy did put into the chat that Rep. Williams is also very approachable, very much. We had a meeting, a meet and greet with Rep. Dan Williams, as well as the executive director of the committee. Her name is Imogen. And they both are well receptive. They love having conversations. They ask great questions, which I always appreciate. And so if you do have the opportunity to contact the office, I will say that you will be met with respect, and you also will be met with just sort of the curiosity of sort of how this bill is going to sort of impact you. Just real quick, I just did want to go to the chat. So we did put some links in the chat for you to visit. If anyone can find the lead one, that's the one I couldn't find. I just put the one to our actual website, but if anyone can find the specific lead one and just put that in there. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, so also so what does it look like when you're going to talk to an elected official? And real quick, Sean, I don't know what your schedule is like, but is there any specific questions for Sean just before? I don't know if you're going to stay the whole time or if you need to leave, but before you do,
if you guys have questions, I'm here.
Okay, all right, so great. So what does this look like in terms of lead? So when you're going to your meetings and you're talking to whoever you have that meeting with. So we do have some talking points, and I apologize. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to update these from last year, but they will be updated by lead, which will be also be giving you these talking points. So give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. I mean, if my computer decides to work.
I think the main change would just be the bill number on the fact sheets as well. So most of everything else I think is the same.
I think it is the same.
Yeah, as far as I recall, that's the only thing that changed with this.
Okay, and I actually already did change it. I forgot to send it to you all, so I apologize. Okay, because we want to make sure that when we are having conversations that we are being consistent in what we are communicating to the reps. That was something that we want to make sure that everyone, when they're going to the office, that we have sort of some of the same talking points, but also personalize it, especially if you're meeting with a rep that is your sorry. Especially if you're meeting with a rep that is your elected official, you want to bring your personal experience to that. And so this will be information that we'll be handing out. So we do have a summary of, and this is what I mean, there's little things in here. So I switched the top, but I got to go through it and change all of the wording throughout. But we do have a summary that just explains what is the bill, and then gives you a summary about why this bill was created and who it's designated to help. We have a line in here, or a section that talks about what is the benefit to the constituents? How does providing stipends for social work students, how does that have an impact on the constituents of your elected official's office? Then we also talk about how there's a focus on underdeserved communities. And from my own personal experience, when I went back to school and was getting my master's, we all know how challenging it can be getting your master's. My last year, which was our advanced year, I had to be at my internship for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and there was no flexibility. I was at a hospital setting, and so there's no flexibility. It was like you either do these or you no longer can have the internship. And so then I had to take classes Monday, Friday, and even Saturday. Oh, I will not recommend Saturday classes. And so that was a huge barrier for me to have to quit my job, to lose healthcare, to move back home, and then also not have an income. So if this was a bill that was introduced when I was a student, this would have been extremely helpful in just the day-to-day, right? So trying to figure, we know that students are dealing with food insecurity. We know that students are dealing with the loss of healthcare, and what does that mean for our own mental and physical health? And so this is something that will help sort of address some of those barriers.
I want to jump in real quick, President McNeil. This loan forgiveness bit is from the other bill that we're still putting together.
Yes. So forget this part. As I said, I did need to update this, all of you. So I promise this will be updated by the time lead comes. But this is going to be removed because, again, this is going to be a separate
preview of coming attractions.
Yes.
And that one we were looking into should end up being a wider net for who's covered on that one.
Yes. Awesome. And then the last one is addressing the social work shortage. I think we all are aware of this. My day job is in workforce development. We understand that there's a workforce shortage, and a lot of this has to deal with sort of how expensive it is to go to school and some of the challenges and that we're facing. And so that's also something to communicate to the elected official when you're having a conversation with them, is how this is actually going to address the social work shortage. It is not a solution. This is part of what many solutions to be, but this is going to sort of help address that. So I know I shared a lot of information with you all, but we will be sending this information out to you. We also will have it at LEAD. And Joanna, I saw that you unmuted yourself, so I just wanted to hand it over to you if you had something to speak about.
Great. Thank you, President McNeil. I really appreciate your attentiveness there. I wanted to talk a little bit about the study that our workforce committee did a few years ago that really tied into the work that this bill is doing. I think I forget exactly the circumstances of how it became an issue, but our workforce committee was looking at, had heard quite a bit from social work students who were in the field, who were doing their practicum settings and were experiencing challenges. And so they wanted to know a little bit more about that and what the experience of our actual population. So they did a study. It included not only like current students or folks who were like currently in their practicum settings, but also social workers, active social workers now, to see what their experiences had been during that time. And there was quite a bit. Like the results were quite clear that there was high percentages of people who had to leave jobs or reduce hours at their jobs. Others who were, experience others that were high level of like having losing health insurance, especially if their health insurance was employment related. Social work students who were experiencing transportation challenges. I know that's one that like NASW-PA, we frequently do remote internships, but we've had students that are with our office who either didn't had cars or got into car accidents while they were doing their internships with us. Um, High levels of stress, feeling like they weren't paying enough attention to their families, like that sort of thing. The results were pretty startling, and they were able to get that they did an actual study and got that study published in a professional journal. But that really does emphasize like and connect back to the talking points that we're experiencing. We know that many of you will be going to talk. This one you're going to focus on your representative for the time being. We don't have there's not a Senate companion bill. So the goal for a House Bill 66 is to pass it in the House, and then we'll take on advocacy to the Senate. You're welcome to educate your senators about the fact that this bill exists and that you hope that it will eventually cross paths. But at this point, you're not saying co-sponsor or pass the bill as a senator. You're just saying like, hey, FYI, this is what's going on in the House. But when you're talking to your representatives, you can focus on this bill in particular, but also, share those stories. Like if you've had to leave a job, or if you've had to cut back on your hours, or if you're looking, or if you're a junior or a sophomore right now and you're looking ahead to your placement year and going like, how am I going to manage this financially? Those are exactly the stories that I think will resonate with our elected officials. And maybe it's not you, but maybe it's like a friend of yours, or a story that you've heard, or that sort of thing. So those types of personal experiences can be very significant. So I encourage you to share those.
Absolutely. So do we have any questions from the audience? If it has to do with the bill or even with LEAD, we are here to answer any questions you all may have.
I also just want to say, do folks on here feel comfortable speaking to elected officials and telling their story? It's okay if you don't. That's why I wanted to ask that. Like, have folks here done that? Is it intimidating? Any feedback from folks on that?
So yes, House Bill 66 is right now just for MSW, and it is 5,000 per semester.
In terms of being intimidated, just people, normal people for the most part. But also, it's when you call these offices, you're going to get somebody like me. You're almost certainly not going to get the actual representative. So it's really just, some dork off the street that you're going to talk to.
Sean, I was going to answer this in the chat. Someone asked, is there a certain amount of time we should talk for? I will say, when you sign up, usually have about 15 to maybe a half an hour. If you get a half an hour, that's lucky. But usually it's about 15 minutes. And Sean, can you speak to that? Is it different for every?
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's different, but
there's a lot of discretion in what the different offices get to do. But really, it's just whatever it takes to let the office know. I mean, it could be as simple as an email saying, support that. And that could be, it's going to depend on who the representative is. You know, and how busy they are, if they're going to take a 15-minute meeting, perhaps. But a lot of times a quick phone call or email will get the message across as well. Because if you get a dozen calls in a 2-day period all saying the same thing, oh, maybe I should take that under consideration.
Mm-hmm. I can walk folks through this a little bit. So first off, I hope everybody here is registered as an attendee for LEAD. If you're not, you want to go ahead and get signed up, because we do cut off registration on Sunday. So and we want to make sure that we have enough packets and materials for everybody who's going to be there. So one, if you haven't registered already, please do. But part of what you're going to get when you come to LEAD and as a registered LEAD attendee, you'll get a bag full of resources and materials when you arrive. You'll also get access to the LEAD attendee only website. That's one I'm not going to put in the chat, but if you are registered to attend LEAD, especially if you've been registered before the last few days, you should have gotten an email that included that information. So, but yeah, there's a LEAD attendee page. And that page, one of the things that we're working on at the chapter office today is that we are working on posting all of the appointments. We have in actual folks who are doing their field placements with NASW. We have 4 interns right now, and they've been working on getting all of those appointments set. It will work by school, so that, like if you are coming from Kutztown, for example, then you'll look up when and where the Kutztown appointments are. It's going to be alphabetized by school, and then it'll tell you, you have an appointment set for, somewhere in the range of like 12:30 to 3 o'clock, I think, as far as like what we've been working towards is one appointment with your representative, one appointment with your senator. For the most part, that's staff members, not exactly like Sean just said. You're meeting with somebody, you're meeting with somebody like him, not necessarily the representative or the senator themselves, but we know that can be equally as impactful, if not more impactful, because you're reaching the folks who are the folks behind the scenes.
I would say that because usually the representative's going to have other things on their mind. They're going to be just a little plug for myself.
Exactly. Thank you. And those are, for the most part, have been set for 15-minute increments. Again, your appointment might not last the entire 15. Sometimes it might go over. We've had folks who have randomly decided to take their student groups on tours of the Capitol, or take them to the House or the Senate floor. That's happened before. And if you're open to it and they suggest it, then you can tackle that when it comes. But for the most part, it's going to be brief. And the idea is to get in and out and just kind of divide up amongst your group who's going to be active spokesperson, who's going to go through some of these talking points.
Awesome. Do we have any question? Okay, so it looks like Joanna. So Catherine, I just want to make sure that you got the answer Joanna was talking about posting, and so hopefully that answers.
Yeah, that's an actual perfect example of what I'm talking about. If you want to make appointments with your own or stop by their offices for your rep or your senator, you'll be more than welcome to. But what we've done is that we've made one set of appointments for for Shippensburg based on where Shippensburg is located. So that's what you'll be scheduled to attend. We're also, because the compact bill that we'll be talking more about tomorrow is in the House Professional Licensure Committee, we've also made some additional appointments specifically with members of that committee. Those appointments are open for other folks to attend. We also may direct you there. For example, if you went to if the place for your school did neither the House representative nor the senator was available, then we may just assign you to go to one of those visits with the professional licensure committee. But again, you'll find that information on the lead attendee page and in your packets. And then it'll be listed alphabetically by school with additional appointments kind of at the bottom.
All right. So we're going to do our first form of advocacy right now. So you may be thinking, what is this? And President McNeil, what are you about to make us do? I promise it is not anything crazy. So what you're going to do is the first form of advocacy is making sure that you're well informed. I do not know how many of you are members on this call. We do a lot of communication via our newsletters and our e-news with our members. So if you're not a member, sometimes you are missing out on that very important information. However, we have begun to utilize social media as a way to communicate to all social workers, because even though we are there for our members, everything that we do impacts all of social workers in Pennsylvania. So your first form of advocacy is taking your phone. I know you all have your phones. I have mine right beside me. It's on my charger, but take out your phone. You are going to go to whatever social media platform that you use the most, whether that is Instagram, that is Facebook, or LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn person myself. So you're going to go there, you're going to go to your search, you're going to find NASW, and you are going to click the follow button. This is your first form of advocacy. We will be putting out more alerts. And when we put out those alerts, that means that we have done everything in our leadership power. That means Joanna, myself, and the lobbyists, and Katy, as well as some other members from the legislative committee, we have thought through this process. We have developed the plan. We have did the meet and greets. And now when we put out the advocacy alert, that is for you all. This is how we work together. We know that advocacy is not a one-person job. It's not a five-person job. This is going to require all social workers. And so part of that process is making sure that you're well informed. The other part of that process is if you are thinking about becoming a member, we would love to have more student members. Part of sort of my vision and what we have been working on as a chapter is that we want to know what you all are going through. I graduated my master's in 2019. I think, Katy, you were 2014. And so we have not been a student for a while now. That was also pre-COVID. And so things after COVID looks very different. We're also in times right now where things are looking very different, when we're seeing what's happening with the EOs coming from the federal level. And so if you want NASW to lobby and be there for you and understand your challenges, we need you to be at the table. I know that you hear this all the time, that if you want to be part of the solution, you have to be part of, or if you want to be part of the solution, you got to be at the table. I don't know. It's been a long morning. I had 2 other meetings before this, so I apologize. But we need you. We need more student involvement. And so think about joining as a student. It is $60. And I know that may sound like, oh my gosh, that is a lot. And I get it, because being a student, $60 is a lot. But think about what you would be able to accomplish if you were to join as a member and be a part of some of our legislative agenda or priorities. If you were part of our student committee, and we are building out a student ambassador program. So there is definitely pathways for students to join, to also be involved in what we're doing as a chapter. And so I would encourage you to maybe go to the website, look at the different membership types, or sorry, not the different membership types. Go and look at the benefits of becoming a member. And then if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to someone in leadership. We are always there to help and answer any questions that you may have. And then I'm going to leave you with, I know that LEAD can be a very intimidating event, right? We're talking to state officials. Some of us have never, ooh, just want to make sure someone was, I heard a sound. I just want to make sure someone wasn't asking a question. And so I know that it seems like, oh my gosh, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to miscommunicate something? We as social workers know how to do this work. This is not something that is foreign to us. We are taught from the beginning of our education about how to meet people where they are. We are taught from the beginning of our education about how do you build rapport very quickly with someone. And so we have all those skills. This is not anything new. You all may have done this in your practice if you're a non-traditional student and have come back to get a social work degree. And so you have done that in your previous years. As students, you're learning about this in the classroom. You're learning about this in your internships. So this is not foreign to us. This is actually what social work is. This is who we are. We are advocates. We know how to advocate not only for our communities and the individuals that we're serving. And now what we're asking you to do is to turn that and do that for you. Because if our class is not full, who are we going to help? If we are not prioritizing our profession and getting everything that we need, what is that benefit to the communities that we're serving? You all have a proven track record of being able to advocate, whether that's advocating for yourself, for the individuals that you're serving, or for the communities that you're working for. And so you take that skill set and now you use it to benefit yourself and the profession. And that's where I'm going to leave you.
All right, thank you. One just slight variation to what President McNeil said earlier. When you're following us on social media, be sure you're looking for the Pennsylvania chapter. There is NASW more generally, but we recommend following them as well. Like it keeps you updated on all of the national issues. So just to do my regular closing spiel, again, this is the third day of the Lead Up to Lead series. Tomorrow, we will be going in depth into the Interstate Social Work Compact, and we'll be joined by Representative Arian Abney, who is our not only our bill sponsor, but is the sole professional social worker in the General Assembly. He's always very inspirational and very open to not only talking about the bill, but his own experiences as a social worker and a legislator. So we'll look forward to having him join us. And we've also invited, because we do have a bill sponsor in the Senate as well, we've invited folks from Senator Pennycook's team to be on as well. And then Friday, we're going to kind of do a wrap up of a lot of the stuff that we've covered and try to help connect the dots between ethics, advocacy, all of the macro social work, all of the things that we've been talking about all week. But in to kind of get a little bit more in depth about some of these issues. So again, we'll be recording each of these sessions and posting the recording within a couple of hours of when the webinar happens. So if you miss any of them, you're welcome to join us. And we look forward to, no matter what, no matter how much training you're able to adopt or participate in, we really look forward to having you next Tuesday at LEAD. And good news, I checked the weather today. It's 0% chance of precipitation. And it looks like the temperature during our event will be about 42 degrees. So plan accordingly. I think that's a bit warmer than it was last year as well.
We got a question.
Oh, sure.
Joanna and President McNeil, you guys got a question in the chat.
Yes, if you look at if you look at your appointments or whatever, and you as individuals, there's also going to be a few, I should mention, one of our interns who's working on this, Tim Chambers, mentioned that that he talked to a representative who literally said they had room for 5 people in their office. So we're going to have notes like that with a few of the visits where it'll say like limit 5 people, and you'll kind of have to decide if you're a larger, if you're a larger university and you have more than that, you're kind of have to decide who's going to that one and who's not. You can divide and conquer, but yes, if there's nobody from your area and you're seeing like, oh, this other university is right near us, you're welcome to tag along on their appointments as well. All right. Well, with that, we will close out for the day. Thank you all for joining us today and or watching this video. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Thank you.